Welcome back to Benefits of Bipolar, Season 2. I'm your host, Lee Fermella, back again. Took a little bit of a break, hoping to get another 4 or 5 in here. However, this season we are starting off with an absolute banger, if you will, an OG bipolar advocate, an award-winning speaker. He is the author of, what is it, Mental Illness is an Asshole, I believe.
Mental
Hold
illness
it
is
up.
an asshole and other observations. It's the other observations that makes it classy.
It's very classy and accurate, extremely accurate. Also, the only person openly living with bipolar disorder hosting a podcast for a major media company. That podcast is called Inside Mental Health, and it's great. He covers a lot of unique topics. I loved the crying in the workplace one. Just listen to that one. And my favorite named podcast out there, A Bipolar, a Schizophrenic, and a Podcast.
I do
Um,
that one with Michelle Hammer. I got to give Michelle
yes,
Hammer
please.
like a plug here. It's part of my contract.
No, please do. And she's fantastically entertaining. She's fantastically knowledgeable and honest and open, like both of you are, about what you go through. So it's incredibly illuminating. You both have a great Instagram presence, but hers is so honest and so open that if you don't know anything about schizophrenia, she's somebody to start with. And lastly, my favorite, being a history major, I cannot believe you spoke at the University of, or Oxford University in England. That's amazing. I saw some of the pictures. So, Gabe, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. And you know you're on a bipolar podcast when it's like, and he spoke at the university and he spoke at Oxford University, and I saw the picture, so he's not making it up. It wasn't mania. He was definitely at Oxford. There was video, there was photographs. He has a notarized document. He was there. I swear, everybody, it's not bullshit. Like that's you get that when you're on a bike. No, I get it too. I do it too over on my shows. I'm like, he's not lying. She is
That's
honest as the day is long.
well, we're usually honest, whether we can help it or not, just because it just comes out of our mouths without, that total regulation.
We can't help it. It comes out, and then we're like, oh, that was supposed to be an inside voice.
That was out loud. That was out loud. All right.
Shit. I can tell by the looks on your face that I said that out loud. I'm going to go over here now.
Exactly. But basically life, living with bipolar. See, everybody knows. Now we can end. Good podcast, Gabe. Thanks for coming on.
Hey,
Uh,
I'm glad you could have me. It was fun to be here. Hopefully, I'm getting a standing ovation, and I'll see everybody next time.
oh man. All right. Well, so because I don't know you very well, have just met you, and a lot of what you share now, or at least what you have in your podcast now, because you've been doing this so long, is as a host. You're asking other people questions, you're asking those, and so I honestly haven't been able to dig through enough of them to find your full story, other than what I kind of saw on your website. So I just kind of want to start with the basics. I always like to cover living with bipolar. I'm always curious. When were you diagnosed and how? How did that come about?
Yeah, so obviously it's a big long story because any question you ask me is obviously a big long story. I didn't get into public speaking and podcasting on accident. Like it's a well suited job for me. But the TikTok version, if you will, is I was diagnosed at 26 years old back in 2003, and I had all the classic symptoms. From suicidal depression all the way to godlike mania, everything in between, grandiosity, hypersexuality. They're just thinking that I knew everything. I when I was diagnosed, I was called the doctor said that I was a classic presentation, and I see it now. Like the more that I've learned about the illness, I see it. I really should have been diagnosed a lot sooner, but of course, myself, members of my family, nobody really understood mental illness except for we were positive that it happened to bad families
Yep.
and that it happened to people who were like drooling, violent,
Yep.
rocking back and forth. I mean, we really thought that mental illness was this very stereotypically pop culture representation, the antisocial psychopath, violent kind of thing. And as you can hear, um, I'm an extrovert. I'm gregarious. I like people. I like talking. I'm of average intelligence. And I do in fact come from a good family. So
Yeah.
the short answer to your question: 26 years old, back in 2003, I was committed to a psychiatric hospital, and that's where I was diagnosed.
Okay. Yeah. And all of that makes sense. Like you said, it's kind of textbook. You hear a lot about that. So can I ask what it was that ended you up in the hospital? That like what was that either event or that buildup that caused that?
Yeah, so I thought about suicide as far back as I can remember. And I always like to be really, really clear with the audience. When I say as far back as I can remember, I am in fact talking about 5 years old.
Yeah.
It wasn't a fleeting thing. It was suicide was an option to leave this place. And I decided that everybody else, or not decided, I just assumed really
Assumed.
that everybody thought this way.
Yep.
Remember, I was born this way. I was born
Yep.
thinking this way. I was born with a bipolar brain. This is all I knew, and so I thought it was normal. So when I reached 26 years old, I had failed a lot. I was going through my first divorce. I had all of these problems. Obviously, untreated bipolar disorder leaves just a wake of damage. And I finally decided, you know what, I've had enough. I've been thinking about suicide pretty much every day for my entire life. I'm now ready to end my life. And I convinced myself that like my mother and my grandmother would be at my funeral, like so proud of me. They'd be like, oh, he made a lot of bad decisions, but this was the smart one. We're just so proud he finally did it. We're just, oh, we lost hope in that boy, but then he killed himself, and yep, he proved his worth there. That's what was going on in my mind. And a woman I was casually dating at the time, and I want to be super clear, like she wasn't a girlfriend, she wasn't a friend. Casually dating is actually look, she was a friend with benefits, minus the
between.
she was a no strings attached hookup. I don't I'm not saying this to disparage the relationship. I'm saying it because she wasn't a family friend, she wasn't a teacher, she wasn't anybody who should have gotten involved with this mess.
Yeah.
But she had a basic understanding of mental health issues. Her mother was a psychiatric nurse. She herself had suffered from depression, or does suffer from depression, and she recognized that something was up
Right.
with this dude. And she did something about it. She did the exact right thing. She walked right up to me and she said, Gabe, are you planning on killing yourself? And that started the ball rolling that obviously ended up to me being committed to a psychiatric hospital where I received the diagnosis. So it was lucky to run into her because everybody else in my world just thought I was an asshole.
Yeah. I always considered it luck too. When I finally got diagnosed after 20 years of absolute chaos and daily suicidal thoughts and verbalizing some of those and not to the right. Again, you don't blame anybody. It's nobody's fault for not taking that step, but it is interesting how it's usually luck and usually something you don't expect that starts that.
I'm always glad when people bring that up, that it's really nobody's fault. Mental illness is a mess. It's
Yeah,
just a mess. We don't have good mental health, and I'm saying mental health on purpose. We don't have good mental health education in America, period.
no,
For example, most people don't understand that your mental health can be good. People are like, no, 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 mental health is a bad thing. It's pejorative. It's negative. Mental health is bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's bad. It's mental health. He has mental health. He has mental health. She has mental health. She's doing that mental health thing. No, mental health can in fact be good. In fact, for
yes,
most people, most of the time it's good. So if we lack that basic understanding of general mental health, you can only figure how just screwed we are when it comes to teasing out mental illness, serious and persistent mental illness. The people around me didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of figuring out that I was mentally ill because all they knew was television, and television is just, well, it's if you get your education from TV, you deserve what you get.
yes, absolutely. Well, and to take that a step further, I was in college in 2004. I took a psychology class. Gabe, I read a book that explained bipolar disorder in exactly the terms you just said, and that was in 2004 at the University of Wisconsin. So even though I was college educated, had taken two psychology classes, it didn't matter. It was still such a bad representation of what mental illness was like that I don't look back and blame anybody for not knowing that or assuming or thinking that I had bipolar disorder when none of us had that representation of what it actually was. And so that's why I think it's so cool what you've been doing for so long and why I'm trying to do what I'm doing is because we want to be why I call my benefits of bipolar. I want to put a positive spin on it because everything out there, TV, if you will, especially puts that super large, super out of the, unnormal person. You can tell the bipolar one from everybody else when in reality you can't.
The reality is we only really talk about people with bipolar disorder in crisis. Everything is crisis, 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 crisis. And here's the thing: crisis is entertaining as hell. I want to be direct, right? You've got a person
Absolutely.
standing in a grocery store throwing cans at a Coke machine, screaming that it's a dragon because it's glowing red and making noises, and they're yelling, "Save the children!" I just there's nobody that's not going to go home and tell that story. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
we
Oh
need
my
to be
God.
honest with ourselves about
Yeah.
that. There is,
Yeah.
I don't care how much you hate stigma, how hard you're fighting the discrimination of mental illness. If you witness that at your local grocery store, you're going home right now and telling everybody you know that story. Here's what gets missed though. There's no really other side. There's no
Right.
opposite story, because
Right.
that exact same person who goes to that exact same grocery store and picks up his chips, his lunch meat, his soda, grabs her favorite Ben and Jerry's and bananas and a frozen pizza, and they go home. There's no story to tell there. They're just a regular person going grocery shopping who runs home and says, "You're not going to believe this. Oh my God. There was a woman there and she bought a pizza. No, 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 no. It was stuffed. I mean, it blew my mind. It was stuffed crust. I've never seen that before. Somebody, they opened the door. You should have seen how they opened this freezer door. It's nonsense.
Well,
It's utter nonsense. And that's the problem. All you hear is crisis. All you hear is negative. So when we asked, why does the public think that people with bipolar disorder are always a problem? That's all they hear. If you
yeah.
think about it, it's actually a reasonable conclusion when the only stories we spread, when the only thing that's in the media is crisis, 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 crisis.
Absolutely. And there's nobody there to see her in a year have that breakthrough, which is the story you just told. Nobody
Exactly.
understands that somebody from like for me, the first time I went to the grocery store without headphones on, that was a breakthrough for me. I was able to navigate that without the distraction and feeling safe within my, you know what I mean? So nobody's there to show or to see that part of it that year later after all the hard work that they did, but they still remember that blow up in the grocery store, that moment. It sticks out a lot more. So speaking of
Nobody
that,
follows up with these folks. And I
right,
think that's important. I think that
right,
we as a society need to remind people of that. I really do think here's the reality. You've got crisis, which is dramatic, right? And then you've got wellness, which is boring as shit.
yeah,
That,
absolutely.
that's it. It's not like, see, in other areas, right? Like let's take sports, right? You've
Yes,
got crisis, which is losing, very dramatic, and you've got winning, which is winning, very dramatic, right? We don't have that in bipolar disorder. We either have the dramatic crisis or we have our shit together.
yes,
There's no upper level. And I'm that's just the way it is. Like, society isn't doing this to us. I want to be clear. This isn't like society being mean. This is just one of the harsh realities. Wellness is boring. The only way that we can take power back is, of course, to accomplish things that have nothing to do with bipolar disorder. Right. I mean,
right.
that's the reality, right? Speaking at Oxford has nothing to do with bipolar disorder. And I only use that because that's the example that we talked about at the beginning of the show. Getting married, owning a house, buying a car, having children, babysitting your nieces and nephews,
Yeah.
volunteering in the community. None of those things are because of bipolar disorder. They're because we're good people who have chosen to use our lives in some way, either to benefit ourselves, to benefit society, to benefit those who we love. The way that we can take some of this power back is to make sure that while we're doing that, and I know this is a weird thing to say, but it can't just be Gabe is helping his sister with Gabe is helping his sister and brother-in-law with his niece, with their daughter, who's a real handful. It has to be Gabe the bipolar is helping his sister and brother-in-law with his niece, who happens to be a handful. But that's kind of messed up too. Like my sister says, you just want me to walk around telling people you have bipolar disorder, and I'm like,
Yes.
sorta,
Actually, yes.
sorta, yeah,
Yeah.
kinda,
Yeah.
yeah, kinda. But that's messed up, right? Like, who does that?
It is. It is. And I think that's something that we probably struggle with. And I mean, I do. It's like, we don't necessarily want to be self-promoters. We talked about this before we got on camera. It's like, I feel like I'm making up for things that I've done in the past. So being a self-promoter feels completely opposite of anything I want to do because I don't feel like I should be, or I don't, and those feelings go away over time. But I completely understand what you're saying on that front. So kind of to get back to not get back, but to use that. So you talk about Gabe with bipolar does this. Well, Gabe with bipolar has done a shitload. Okay. But before that, I think for people who maybe are more on my timeline or even more recently diagnosed than myself, how long did it take you to kind of achieve that, what we call stability from the outside, what I kind of call adult living or maturity, that arrested development is finally done. I was finally able to actually acquire life skills. How long did that take? I know for me, I'm in about year 4, and I feel over the last few months, I finally am looking around like, I have life skills. Holy shit, I'm doing those things I was jealous of 10 years ago. How long did
Yeah,
that
for me it was 4 years from the time I really peg the start of this process when I left the psychiatric hospital.
take?
I was committed to a psychiatric hospital and I left. So that's sort of my day one for those playing along at home. And then about 4 years later, I had sort of the exact same experience that you were describing, Lee, where I just woke up one day and I'm like, huh, I'm accomplishing stuff. I'm paying my bills. I've got a job. I'm contributing to society. I haven't really had an episode in a long time, and so I always call it my 4 year epic battle. And now that said, I don't want anybody to hear that and think that that meant that I was in crisis for 4 years and then suddenly well. Right. It
Right.
was like a yo yo on an up escalator. Right. I was always kind of trending up, but I'd have good days and bad days, and I'd have setbacks and resurgence and I'd have good stretches of times and bad stretches of time, but
Maybe shorter episodes, less
yeah,
intense episodes, more recoverable. Get back to that
exactly,
baseline quicker.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was learning coping skills along the way. So, in that 4 years, the very first time I used the coping skill failed miserably. Coping skill did almost nothing. But then let's look at the middle. Now the coping skill is doing more. It's not doing enough, but it's doing significantly more than it was the first time I used the coping skill. Now, obviously, the goal is for the coping skill to work, right? If you are training to be a firefighter and the first time you go to the fire, you put out none of the fire. And the second time you put out 50% of the fire, they still should not hire you to be a firefighter. Putting out half of the fire is failure, and you are not a good firefighter. But if you're looking at your own training and you're like, hey, I am closer now to putting out the whole fire than I was when I started, which means I'm on the right training path. And that's the example that I like to use. I mean, think of like your schooling. Everybody talks about graduating college, but they make it sound like you started college one day and knew nothing, and then you graduated and knew everything. But in actuality, it's this slow build over, 3, 4, 5 years. And that's what you need to look at. But one day I just woke up and I'm like, shit, I, I think I made it. Now, I also want people to understand that being in recovery doesn't mean never having a setback. It doesn't mean never having a symptom. I just consider recovery spending more of my life living my life than I do managing bipolar. And I also consider recovery when those symptoms come, I know what to do.
Right.
They're not as scary because I just, again, to go back to the firefighter analogy, we always ask ourselves, how can a human run into a burning building? Like, why on earth would a human do that? And one of the answers is because they know what to do.
Yeah.
They know it's not scary to them because they know what to look for, right? They've got the right protective gear. They've got the right training. They understand where is a safe place to move and where is a dangerous place to move, and they can play the odds. It's yeah, running into a burning building with zero training, yeah, that's absolutely terrifying. And that's not what well-trained firefighters are doing. When you see them run into the burning building, it's because they have experience, or in our language, to tie it back to us, it's because they have coping skills
Yeah.
for how to deal with that situation.
And to take that analogy one step further, every person, I feel like so many of my symptoms are similar, but yet every time it's a little bit different. So these firefighters are running in, not every fire is the same, but you use those same skills to try and put them out. And it's not going to work perfectly every single time, but that means you're learning a new one. You're learning another symptom and another way of helping that.
you're
So
building on it. And, I like this firefighter analogy, and I don't know why I want to stay on it, but you know what else that firefighters do that I don't think anybody gives credit for when they give analogies like these? They rely on their teammates. They rely
yes,
on the other
yes,
firefighters. The other firefighters know when they get in over their head and they're like, hey, I got stuck in a room, y'all. And everybody's like, okay, we have had enough conversations with Gabe, the firefighter, that we know that he went left. We know what room he's in. And Gabe is saying that he's stuck in that room. And Gabe told us what to do. Gabe knows to stand back from the door because we're going to kick it in. So we don't have to waste time asking to kick it. No, Gabe is already standing away from the door. So they know the room I'm in. They know the door to kick in. They know that I'm standing on the other side. I was smart enough to ask for help. And as soon as that door comes down, they just say, Gabe, you good? I yell, yep. I know to run through that door. I know to meet. That's an awful lot of training. People with bipolar disorder need to do the same thing with their
yes.
support staff. And so often, like, no, I'm managing it on my own. I'm
No,
like, great. You get stuck in the room. You have no idea what to do.
you're
You
locked.
don't ask for help until the room is burned down. Even if you do ask for help, you haven't trained people on how to save you, which is really important with bipolar disorder because chances are, right? Like in the analogy of firefighters, right? The people you're asking for help are also trained firefighters.
Yes,
The reality is for people with bipolar disorder, the people we're asking for help are probably not living with bipolar disorder or serious and persistent mental illness. So we need to train them because if we don't, it's just pandemonium and chaos in a time where you really need not chaos.
exactly.
And this is what gets me hate mail, Lee. This is what always gets me hate mail. This is on you. This is on the person living with bipolar. Everybody hates it. They're like, you're victim blaming. I'm not. I
Nope.
think it's empowering to take control,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying take control, build your support team, train them, keep communication open, and that makes you the leader. I think that's super empowering, but unfortunately, some people hear that as, well, you're just blaming me because I'm sick. I'm not. I'm empowering you to be more than just sick.
Gabe, I got to be honest. I think I would have thought that probably 2 years ago. I think had I heard you speak and I heard you say that 2 years ago, I would have been like, God, what is he talking about? I have no control over this. There's no way I can. And no, but there's no question to me now that you're 100% right. Without taking accountability of your own health, of taking control of your own disability with your own disorder, whatever that looks like to you, and like you said, asking for help early. To take this, if you call when the house is burned down, they can't do shit. If you call when you see the first bit of fire, you reach out to your specialist, your team, your family, whoever it is, and like you said, you've communicated in the past. They know your warning signs as well as you do, what to help you with. Absolutely. It all comes down to that communication and asking for help. And especially, I love that you say that because we're both men. We've both dealt with that. I want to do it on my own, but I've always said my pride almost killed me.
I
My
think that's
pride
a
of wanting
really
to do it
powerful
alone.
statement,
Yeah.
right? My pride almost killed me.
Yeah.
I I also, Lee, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I hate
Please.
that when I hear people say I want to do it on my own. And
Yes.
here's why. Here's why. Nothing of any value in society, in history, has ever been done on someone's own. Now think about that. Think of somebody that you hold in like super high regard, right? If you're a tech nerd like me, you're going to start saying things like Bill Gates,
Yeah.
right? Who's that Apple guy?
Steve
Who's the
Jobs.
founder? Yeah,
Steve
Steve
Jobs.
Jobs. You're
Yeah,
going
I
to say
think. Yeah.
Steve
Yeah.
Jobs, right? People say like Elon Musk and
Sure. Mm.
trying to go to space, right? And everybody's like, these are self-made men. Bullshit. I've seen their companies. They have thousands upon thousands of employees. They are
Absolutely.
all over the world. They have this network of people. Here's the kicker, helping them.
Yes.
So even we lie to ourselves. They're like, well, I want to be self-made, just like fill in the blank. I that that when you see these people on television, there's people standing next to them. They have aides and office staffers and just the how anybody believes in this concept of self-made person, and it's always men who do this. So self-made
It
people,
really is.
it's just bullshit. It's just none of these
It is.
people are self-made. Right now,
Absolutely.
they may be leaders.
Yes.
I'll give you that. They may be in charge. They may be making the decisions, but I'm sorry, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, whomever you want to pull out of your butt, whatever politician you love, rock star you love, I don't care. I guarantee people help them. And if those people say, well, I was never helped, well, now they're just delusional. it, it's impossible to do anything truly alone.
Now they're
And
just current day Elon Musk.
pardon?
Now they're just current day Elon Musk.
Yeah, they're currently, yeah, he is really fond of saying, and you know, I try not to delve into this area, but you started it. He's really fond of saying that he does this all by himself.
Yeah.
And I always point out that he bought Tesla. He loves to call himself the founder of Tesla, but he's not. He
That's awesome.
purchased it. So he's just a liar. And that, but I do think that there's a good analogy here because I'm not trying to delve into the political nature of Elon Musk. I'm just delving into the psychology. He genuinely believes that because he didn't come up with the idea and he just bought it, that he's somehow less than. And the reality is that the real story is incredibly amazing. He realized that he had the resources and the infrastructure to take this small EV company and this idea to the next level. And no matter how you feel about him, he did it.
Yeah.
Tesla is a force, but he is so hung up on the idea that he's not the founder that he lies about it. And again, the real story is incredible, but it's not enough for him because he wants to be the guy. And I think people with bipolar disorder get themselves hung up with this all the time.
Mm-hmm.
The real story is actually incredible. You were given an illness that you did not want. It struck you down. It messed with you. It screwed you up. It alienated people. You took control of that illness. You utilized your network, medication, therapy, support groups, online reading, podcasts, your friends, your family. You took the bull by the horns and beat an illness that lives in your brain. That's an incredible story. And yet, for some reason, it's not enough. It's not enough. I do understand it, if I'm being honest, Lee, but you can see how it keeps people sick.
Yeah. Oh no. And I totally understand it, especially when, and I mean, I didn't get diagnosed till I was 33, 34. You get so used to that. And now you have a reason on top of it that it's not your fault, but you can also look at that as a reason to assume you can't do anything more. Because that's what I thought right away. It's like, oh, I'm limited. I'm not going to be able to do this. My limitations are here. And then, but once you start pushing yourself and you see other people like yourself, you see other people like, our friend Cody and like you mentioned, Michelle, that are pushing themselves. They might hit limits and come back down a little bit, but then they get back up and they keep pushing themselves. And so I think what you're doing and what we're trying to do here is give people an example. And that's why I think, I forget the wording that you use, but you say something along the lines of trying to be an example of, or that person that you never saw. You never saw just another guy with bipolar disorder doing something cool.
Yeah, I know exactly where it's, so when I was diagnosed back in 2003, I only knew one person who ever had a bipolar diagnosis, and that was a gentleman by the name of Kurt Cobain, who was the lead singer for the alternative rock band Nirvana, huge in the 90s. They basically invented grunge. So he was a millionaire. He was famous. He lived with bipolar disorder, and he died by suicide. So you can imagine when I get diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I'm not famous. I did not invent grunge. I am not rich. I'm not. I'm just a guy who is diagnosed with an illness that this rich dude couldn't beat.
Absolutely.
So that was particularly devastating to me because again, all of my knowledge about bipolar disorder I learned from television, and what I learned from television is that I was violent, broken, and rich people can't beat this illness. Particularly devastating. It was particular. I was already hopeless because when you're in a mental hospital, when you're committed to a psychiatric hospital, you're not exactly filled with confidence and reassurance
or hope.
Or hope.
Good feeling.
And then I get this illness that I'm positive is a death sentence because I knew somebody who died from it. And the person who died from it had access to everything in the world, everything that the world had to offer. Apparently, that was my understanding in the moment. And that really sucked. So, 4 years later when I got well, I really had this idea in my head of what if I show like, a common schlub? And I do like self-deprecating humor. I'll be the first to admit, but I don't really mean it because I'm just a regular guy, right?
That's
I
what
was
it is.
raised stereotypically blue collar. My parents love me, but they're not doctors. My dad's a truck driver, my mom's a stay-at-home mom. I had a stable upbringing with lots of yelling. Uh,
Yep.
and
Yep.
of course they missed diagnosing me with bipolar disorder. There's just a lot of there's a lot of back and forth that just is really stereotypical of the American experience.
Yep.
And I feel in many ways, I encapsulated some of that. And I felt like a lot of people would just really resonate with my story. And I realized that where we were learning even about positive portrayals of mental illness were like rich people. I love Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia. I do. And she did a wonderful job
Yes.
educating people about addiction and bipolar. But she was born to movie star parents.
It's not
She was
overly relevant.
yeah, she was raised wealthy.
Yep.
She was Princess Leia. So I don't want anybody to hear that she did a bad job, but I I couldn't really
Relate.
I couldn't relate to most of it
Mm-hmm.
because I was still trying to figure out how to get health insurance.
Yep.
This was not an issue for Carrie Fisher.
Yep.
I was still trying to figure out how to get rides to and from things or survive when I couldn't work. And these were not issues for Carrie Fisher. So even though Carrie Fisher did a wonderful job, and I feel that she acknowledged those things, which is
Yeah,
one
she
of the
did.
things I liked about her.
She
She
did
was
in her book. Yeah, at
yeah,
least.
yeah, she
Yeah.
was pretty blunt about the fact that she was a super super privileged drunk.
Yeah.
I believe those were her exact words.
I
Uh,
think so too.
yeah, and so that's all great, but I just wanted somebody to see like a
Yeah.
normal person, and because I wanted to see a normal person,
Yep.
and I didn't think it would get this far. I want to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm shocked I'm here.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I don't want to go further, just in case
Keep
there's any
going.
casting agents listening. Um, but every time I do something, every time I get somewhere, I think to myself, I just really hope somebody watching just takes this message away. This guy's an idiot, and I can be an idiot, so therefore I'm going to be okay. That's really all I want in the world. I really don't want anybody to think, oh, he's special. Because if you have to be special to beat bipolar disorder, I think that's a dangerous, dangerous message. Because most people, especially when suffering from bipolar disorder,
Aren't
do
special.
not think they're special. I sure as hell did not, in my sickest moments, my depression moments, my weighing the pros and cons of life and death, suicide. I'm like, you know what? I'm
I'm
special.
special.
Yeah, God has shined down on me. No, I never thought. I thought I was garbage. So if the only way you can beat bipolar disorder is to be special or to have special circumstances, we're doing a great big disservice. So I really hope that society sees me for the just dramatically flawed human that I am. Because if they see themselves for a dramatically flawed human, they're like, hey, there is precedent. He did it. I can do it. I think that's a much much better message than people with bipolar disorder are special or you have to be special to beat it. But it's tough.
100%. 100%. You have to be willing to put in the work. You have to be willing to go inside of yourself. But that's something everybody can. And I also want to, some people probably have it severe enough that they might not have that ability to. So I want to always put, pour one out, if you will, keep those people along with and understand, what might look like great stability for one person, what you and I might be able to achieve might not be, what you may look at as I spoke at Oxford might be somebody's, like I said, going grocery shopping without having a breakdown. That might
Exactly.
be the equivalent for them of hitting your absolute peak or what we would consider something else. So I think it's so important that you do try and do that. And I think you also do an incredible job of that, of still being that person. I didn't know you 20 years ago. I didn't know you when you started speaking, whenever that was,
Was a
but you
mess.
still
I was
have
a
that. What was it?
mess.
It was,
I was a mess.
well, aren't we all? But,
Yeah.
but you still hold on to some of that. And I think that's what's so valuable. You don't seem unattainable, if
And
that
that's
makes
that's my
sense.
goal.
Yeah, and you're
I,
doing
I
a
just
great job of it.
Well, Lee, thank you so much. You know, the I never I don't first off, I don't want to insult any influencer out there. I want to be very, very clear. Everybody has different lanes and they have different things that they're trying to do. I want to be very, very clear. I am not saying that influencers who are overwhelmingly positive are bad, because they're not.
Right.
What I want to say to you, the person listening, is if you're following an influencer who is overwhelmingly positive, that's fantastic, right? Because maybe the advantage to an influencer who is overwhelmingly positive is that if you want something positive, you know that's a safe space to go to get something positive.
Mm-hmm.
What I am telling you is that if you only follow influencers who are overwhelmingly positive, when you stumble, when you have a setback, you're going to start thinking to yourself, well, all the people with bipolar disorder who I follow never have setbacks. And that's not true. It's
Absolutely.
Remember, social media is curated. Influencers are curated, and that's not a bad thing. People, they shit all over influencers all the time. It's like, well, you're delivering the wrong message. No, they're just not delivering that message. It is up to us to make sure that we follow, happy bipolar, everything is always perfect 100% of the time, and bipolar sucks and I hate everything. And I'm a doctor who researches bipolar, and here's the latest facts. And that just people on social media have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of friends, and yet more often than not, they follow like one person with bipolar disorder, or maybe two. Just expand it out. It is sincerely. I think that people should follow a minimum of like 20 mental health influencers, and they should, and if not more, and purposely get all kinds of ideas. Also, I think it's super powerful when there's an influencer who you like and they post something and you're like, bullshit, I don't agree with any of that. No. And here's why I say this. I love my wife. I have a great relationship with my wife. We've been married for 12 years. And do you honestly believe that she never walks in a room and says something and I think to myself, that's dumb? That's the dumbest thing ever. Now I'm going to flip it around, right? Some people are like, that's mean, dude. All right, fine. Do you think that my wife picked me? We've been married for 12 years. I'm the love of her life, right? Do you think that I never walk in a room and say something and she thinks, dude, that's dumb? Well, what the hell is my husband talking about? Right. But yeah, nobody's going to say, well, if you don't agree with 100% of what your spouse says, you have a bad marriage. Nobody thinks that. I just, in fact, we know people who actually do agree with 100% of what their significant other says, and we roll our eyes at those people
because we know them behind the.
Yeah, because we just kind of think of them as nonsense. There is not, sincerely, there is nothing better than you mentioned Michelle and Cody. Some of the happiest days of my life are when I'm scrolling through and Michelle or Cody say something that I don't agree with. Because it's wonderful. First off, I get to think to myself, why do they think that and I don't? Right. So now I get to think.
Your critical thinking. Exactly. Yes. That's what.
And then I start to think about it.
Too. Yep.
And then that sends me down a path of getting more information. And then I do know Cody and Michelle in real life, so I do have a slight advantage here. But eventually, sometimes it'll be like, you know what, I'm gonna send Michelle a little text message. I'm like, hey Michelle, I saw your thing, and I don't know, I don't know. And then she'll write back, boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, huh.
Well, I've heard you two disagree on your podcast too, though.
We disagree about everything. These are exciting times, and I want to point out to everybody that look, I hold Michelle in extraordinarily high regard, and we built an entire podcast on disagreeing with each other.
But it's good because that's how you learn.
Exactly.
That's how you learn. You don't learn anything, like you said. If you have a totally negative view on your own bipolar and that's all you look at, you are never, and those are the only people you follow, you're never going to think you're ever going to be able to find stability.
Right.
And opposite, if you're only following, like you said, I mean, the only people I ever knew when I found out I had bipolar were people, millionaires. And I remember talking to my dad. He's like, well, how do you think he found him? I'm like, because he can pay 16 people to travel with him and be his therapist tomorrow or today at 2:00 and do this and have this person on call. I have to figure this out with what I have and the resources I have. And that's what I try and share. I don't know if you see it on my Instagram. I have some very honest ones on there. There's a couple in there talking about mixed episodes, and they aren't pretty, but I think that provides the most value. I mean, being able to show people like, hey, yeah, I might have a smile on the next 9 of these, but if you go back 2 weeks ago, I was having a really shitty day. And that's okay, because I'm getting back to this point. and I'm building right back up, and I'm building up higher. I'm going to figure that out. I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to be better when I come back tomorrow or whenever my body
Exactly.
and mind are ready to be.
Exactly. And I again, I want to make it super. I really do see the benefits I call them Pollyanna accounts where everything is always perfect, always.
Yeah.
People think that I dislike them. That is not my personality. I'm a pretty pessimistic kind of guy. Like if you look at my personality, I'll be the first to admit. But I see such benefit in them but if they're used
Correct.
properly, you know, if you're feeling like absolute shit and you're like, I can never beat this, you know that you can log into Pollyanna Bipolar and you're gonna get some beautiful stuff, some high end stuff. And again, you know, people are like, well, but the negatives then are bad, right? No, because let's say that you yourself are like, why can't I beat this? Everybody's doing better than me. Well, I'm just going to go over here. Look, like you said, you know, Lee had a mixed state. Lee had an issue. Lee is, oh, he's pissed off. Oh, but look, now Lee is fine.
Yeah.
Now Lee is having a good day. Okay. You know, and then you can go over to, like I said, you know, a doctor and say, you know what, I don't know that I understand mixed state. So you go over to, you know, Dr. Bipolar, and he's like, boom, boom, boom. A mixed state is defined as, so when it's done, you've got this real breadth of information that you can now, here's the important part that I want everybody to hear, you can apply to you. And I do think that that's missed. And people are, you know, all the time, people are like, well, you're hard on influencers. You're saying that. I'm like, I'm not. I think that an influencer can influence any way that they want. This is a free country. They can do literally whatever they want. I'm hard on you. I want to know why you, with the vastest of the internet and this ability to literally follow thousands upon thousands of people all at the same time, follow one or two who just happen to agree with you in almost every way and just parrot back to you what you already believe. You're really doing yourself a disservice. You're not challenging yourself. You're not learning. You're not understanding. And look, I just want to wrap up the Gabe and Michelle disagree, or Gabe and his wife disagree, or Gabe and the latest influencer disagree. But you know what I also do? I understand.
Yes.
I may disagree with all of those things, but I understand where they're coming from. You know, the reality is I am a almost 50-year-old white male who lives in the Midwest. Michelle is a 30-something Jewish woman who lives in New York City.
Right.
The reality is it would be impossible for us to agree on things because things affect women differently than they do men. The reality of living in New York is much different than the reality of living in the Midwest.
Yes.
We've you know, she's Jewish and I'm not. Unfortunately, we've all seen the negatives of you know, that sort of stigma, discrimination, yes, racism, anti-Semitism, and hate. So she's got that impacting her as well, and on and on and on. So the reality is while the exact same thing might be pressing down on my chest and her chest, how on earth can we both have the identical outcome with all of those differences? So it really benefits me when I'm like, you know, I completely disagree with you, Michelle, but I'm glad I understand your journey because that makes us better friends. And vice versa. I always want to make sure that I include vice versa. People are like, you know, Gabe, I can see why you're so pissed off about that. I don't agree that you should be pissed off. I think you need to take a chill pill, but you know what? I understand why you're mad. And then maybe that gives them the power to listen to me bitch just a little while longer.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. Like, I appreciate you hearing me out because then my girlfriend didn't have to again, or you got to find more of those people to hear you out so that you can, you know, vary it around a little bit, spread it around a little bit.
Exactly. And venting is super healthy. I want everybody to hear that as well. Anger is a lost art. Venting is, people are like, well, anger is bad. Nothing has ever changed until somebody got angry about it.
Absolutely.
Hard stop. Now, anger is not like a good planning tool, right? But anger is an excellent motivational tool. So I'm really fond of saying anger needs to drive passion. Passion needs to drive planning. Planning needs to drive change. But if you're using anger to drive change, you're skipping some steps.
Yeah, because you're too emotional. I mean, and that's, so what you're saying is basically you got to try and figure out how to manage your emotions anyway,
Exactly.
which is what we have to do to live stable anyways. But look at what it does. It allows you to change and do so much more. But that's what we have to do and bring it back. You have to plan for your next episode.
Exactly.
And I don't know about you. I mean, I still experience episodes. I will be very upfront about that. They are much more manageable and getting more spread apart. And I'm good, but I still have my episodes. Do you? Do you still have those? Or is it a little bit evened out?
It's so the I basically the way that I explain it is before I was diagnosed and in treatment, medication, coping skills, therapy, just the whole gambit. My emotional range was as wide as you can. Just for those just listening, picture me just sticking out my arms as
Yeah.
wide as they'll go, just like it just so and again we got the
360 of
suicidal
emotions.
depression. Yeah, it was just from suicidal depression all the way to godlike mania, everything in between, vacillating back and forth like a giant rubber band. I mean, it's just horrific, right? And when I received treatment, it narrowed it down a lot.
Sure.
Right, into a more manageable way. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes I don't go outside of the safety zone.
Yeah.
But here's, of course, the difference. Once I step a little bit outside the safety zone, I'm immediately aware of it.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I had no idea. I didn't actually go 0 to 60 in an hour before. I didn't go from normal to full blown mania instantly. I went from normal, average, stereotypical to mania over the course of a few hours or a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. But since I didn't know it was coming, I couldn't do anything about it.
Right.
So so there's two answers to your question, and that's what I want to be very clear on. One, yes, I unequivocally still have episodes, but I catch them so quickly that the episodes are not nearly as impactful as they used to be. Now that said, I'm this is not a guarantee.
Yeah.
I've been able to. I'm not saying that I've never hit depression that's lasted a couple of weeks that I haven't needed extra help. For example, when my grandfather died, right? I've got bipolar disorder. I've got a history of depression, and I've got grief, and all of those things can really converge to knock somebody on their ass. But I just had a lot more tools to get through it. So when I say I still have episodes, I don't want anybody to hear that the same way as when I was completely unaware and untreated,
For sure.
because they're different now.
For sure.
And I want people to know that for the most part, everything is super manageable. But it would be a lie to say that I no longer have episodes, but they're different now.
I just really appreciate that because I think it's hard. I see you out there, right? And accomplishing everything that you're accomplishing. And it's really easy for me to compare, to go, oh man, he must be stable. He must be doing this. Everything is fine. But, then you watch a little bit more and you take the other person's point of view, which I think we've been trying to talk about, is try to understand things from the other person, right? From the other side of things. And so that's why one of my biggest questions for you was exactly that. And I appreciate your honesty with that because I think that's so important for people to know. When we say stability, especially if you just got or somebody just got diagnosed or whatever, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, stability, I'm never going to reach that. That's what I thought because I'm like, there's no way I'll never have episode. There's absolutely no way. My brain does its own thing. I'll be able to limit it, but there's no way. So I think that's so valuable for you to share, and that is because it is the tools. It is just limiting the effect that it has on your life. Going all the way back to what you said earlier, less time managing bipolar disorder, more time living the life I prefer to live. And that definition, I just love. I'm going to probably put that up as one of the things when I'm promoting this because I do. That's such a very distinct and good, just great definition of what, to me, stability. I kind of hate, but stability living with bipolar disorder is like. So I want to
Thank you.
kind of finish with kind of a fun one here because I've
All
seen
right.
you.
All right.
Diet Coke is like my favorite thing. Caffeine is like my favorite thing. Coffee is like my favorite fucking thing in the world, right? See, now I dropped one. I saved it for you just about myself.
He swore first, everyone.
I love caffeine, right? And I
Yes.
actually learned
Yes.
this lesson from the worst therapist I ever had. She Googled answers about bipolar on the internet in front of me, but she brought up one thing. She goes, "How much caffeine do you drink?" And I realized I had to cut back. So my question for you is, I have seen your fridge on a holiday. How in God's name can you drink that much caffeine and not end up in an absolute manic episode? What's your trick? I want to drink more coffee. How do I do so?
So first and foremost, this is where it's really super important to understand that every single person with bipolar disorder is different,
Yeah.
right? Like this is probably the best example of this, because it is a hardcore fact that this much caffeine should be the death knell for stability for somebody with bipolar disorder. So I don't want people to think that this means it's bullshit. And we tend to do that, right? We tend to say, well, I know a guy that drinks all this caffeine and it doesn't bother. I know a guy with bipolar disorder who drinks all this caffeine and it doesn't bother him. So that's just bullshit. The doctors are lying to you. And I always
Nope.
say, oh, here, come here, come here. I got this video of this guy who jumped out of a plane and his parachute didn't open and he lived. So parachutes are bullshit. And they're like, no, they're not. I'm like, well, but you just said as long as
This
one
one
person
person.
do it. So I'm showing you one person did it. And
Yep.
then they start to get it. So, but there's another few things that I want people to understand. So first and foremost, I am 6'3", 250 pounds. And I think that gets missed. I am when we do the ratios of size in the world, I am on the largest percentile before we get into like football players and basketball players.
I'm 6'4". I got you, brother. Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So
Yep.
a lot of people look at me and, you know, they weigh $125 and they're 4'11" and they're like, wow, that much caffeine would kill me. Of course it would. You're literally 125 pounds smaller than me. That's the first thing. The second thing is I've been doing this for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
I was drinking this kind of caffeine before I was ever diagnosed. So I'm not saying it's a good thing. And in fact, I'm really saying that it's a bad thing and it's a really, really bad habit. But my body got used to it long before. And then when I started getting adjusted on medications, frankly, they probably adjusted the medications surrounding the amount of caffeine that I was drinking because, and this is another really important, you know, I abuse drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
I had hypersexuality.
Yeah,
I had all kinds of addictions and habits and things that were very dangerous for me. And eventually it all sort of, I don't know, condensed down to dude drinks a lot of Diet Coke. So in many ways, the Diet Coke is a protective factor from doing heroin or cocaine or getting drunk in a bar or having you know, an affair or taking unnecessary risk, you know, driving a car 100 miles an hour without a seatbelt just to feel something. All of these things were very dangerous. And now what I do is I drink a lot of caffeine, right? So all of these things are really important to understand when somebody says the phrase, dude, how can you drink so much caffeine with bipolar disorder? There's many, many years and there's a lot of extenuating circumstances. And again, I this is the last thing that I always say when people ask this. I have an anxiety disorder. I have anxiety attacks. I have panic attacks. They are very real. And people are like, wait a minute, you're a public speaker. Doesn't that ever trigger your anxiety? No.
Yeah.
Oh, no, really? No,
really?
not. I get nervous, but as far as like my anxiety, I do not have anxiety on stage in front of 1,000
once you're up there. Right. Once
you
know
know where I have the panic attack? 2 hours after it's over and I reflect backwards to all the people who are probably pissed off at me because of what I said.
Okay.
That's really awkward.
That
Most people, once it's over, they feel good. And while they're up there, they're chattering. I am the exact opposite. When I'm up there, I'm king of the damn world. I own that stage like I am a conquering king. But that night, few hours later, when I'm on the plane, my heart starts beating. I'm like, oh my God, what if they hated me? What if I get fired? Yeah. What if they think I suck? They're never going to hire me again. That's when my anxiety kicks in. And I'm told by many therapists that that's not uncommon for people with anxiety disorders, but for the rest of society, they don't want to be a public speaker in any way. It blows my mom's mind. She's like, I don't understand how you have panic attacks, but you can be a public speaker. I would have thought that was just off the table for you. I was like, yeah, well, goes to show you, you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. I always get confidence. It's funny now that you say that because I get nervous like the night before. And then I love it when I'm up there. I tell people, I'm like, the first time I kind of hated it. Now I'm addicted to it. I love seeing the faces and people understanding what you're talking about. But mine is not quite I don't know if it's a panic attack afterwards. It probably is. But I just, whether it's 2 minutes after or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I will crumple into a ball and cry because of that emotion that comes out. And whether that's the anxiety that has built up during the time, or if it's reopening all of those stories that I opened, or if it's the emotion of coming from seeing so many people who care.
Yeah.
every time after I'm done, I end up in a ball and my girlfriend or my dad or somebody puts their arm around me, waits, and then I'm ready to go. Good to go
I
again.
do like to be, you said, this is the I wanted to touch back on, just because I think this is one of the problems for people like us having, to manage bipolar disorder. I said I don't have anxiety when I'm on stage, and you're like, or I said, but do I have anxiety? But I don't have anxiety on stage. You said you don't, and I said, but I get nervous. See, this is the problem with words, right?
Yeah.
I don't want anybody to hear that I'm never nervous. I don't want anybody to hear that I don't get butterflies in my stomach. But
Exactly.
that's not, an anxiety disorder or a
Right.
panic attack.
That's nerves.
That's just butterflies and nerves, which are a completely distinct and different thing from anxiety. But most people will say, oh, I've got to give a speech, I'm anxious. And I
Yeah.
will never say I have to give a speech, I'm anxious, because I would be talking about an anxiety disorder. So words really make it difficult to manage bipolar disorder, I think, because if
Yes.
you're like, oh, I'm having anxiety, and you mean medical anxiety, you might find yourself listening to a podcast with great tips on how to manage jitters
Right.
or nerves or
Right.
butterflies, and
Yes.
you're trying to use those coping skills to manage anxiety and panic, and you're like, why aren't these working? I've tried everything. I just
Exactly.
it's a bit like you're trying to put out a house fire and you accidentally end up on a podcast that's talking about how to put out a grease fire. So now you find
Yeah.
yourself outside trying to figure out
Water.
how to put a lid on your house.
Yeah.
I just had, and you're just like, why isn't this working? And they're like, well, why would you ever think that would work? And you're like, well, because I Googled how to put out a fire, and you just accidentally ended up on a grease fire podcast when you're talking about a 5 alarm, your house is engulfed in
Right.
flames. And that's a completely different thing. But they're both called fires. So it's got to be difficult to, or I mean, it is difficult for people like us to find good sources to what's work. So I do want to say that, because it's quite possible that the thing that you're Googling or the things that you're reading are perfect for, depression as
Somebody
in
else.
sadness, but not good for depression as in bipolar depression, major depression, or it's good for anxiety as in, jitters or butterflies, but it's not good for anxiety and panic. And yet we as a society have given them all the same names.
Exactly. Yeah, it's really tough. No, exactly. I thank you for saying that. I could not agree with that more. I mean, and check your sources. Always check your sources. Find the most reputable ones and find the differences, like you said. Those small differences, there might be semantics to some, but they can be life-saving for us. That's the
Agreed.
difference, so speaking of that, I want to get to wrapping up here. You've been so generous with your time and advice and all of your wonderful analogies, and I'm an analogy person, so you made me so happy with those. Speaking of sources, speaking of those, other than you, which I'll finish with where people can find you. Do you have so we talked about Cody, who I'm know lucky enough to know outside of just the Instagram world as well. He is at schizophrenic hippie. Michelle Hammer is, I believe, at schizophrenic.nyc. I
Yep.
believe it's her handle. And I know you mentioned maybe one or two others. Where give people maybe three or four more that you follow for kind of what you value for the best information out there to help people out.
Pulling this stuff off the top of my head is always brutal, because I
You can
really
hit me up.
suck at memorizing people's handles. I know there's Natasha Tracy, and
Okay.
I don't know what her handle is, but she's super super cool,
I'll look that up.
and I recommend following her, but I have no idea what her handle is.
That's okay.
And
I got you. I'll look it up
and
and I'll post it. That's okay.
Awesome, awesome. And then you can see that I'm literally, well, I don't, if you're watching this, you can see that I've opened my Instagram app so that I can pull these out.
This is how
And
much Gabe cares about you. He's willing to go into it, during a live.
I do, because there's so many great people, and I feel bad that I can't remember them.
Well, and if you want to, you can reach out, or if you just want to send me a few, I can put it in the description too, and
No, I'm gonna find them. I'm
find them,
invested now.
find
I'm
them.
invested. This is a famous one, and Maya Bialchik actually doesn't do a bad job. I
Oh
sort of roll
yeah,
my eyes at a lot of celebrities. Maya Bialchik, she was Blossom. She was on The
yep,
Big Bang Theory. She hosted Jeopardy.
yep,
Maya
yep.
Bialchik actually does a decent job. I
Okay,
mean, there is a celebrity. She's got a lot of
twist.
celebrities because of her
Yep.
celebrity, and obviously, like we talked about with Carrie Fisher, we got to keep that in mind. But I want to be clear. I respect a lot of the stuff that she does, and much of it you can find ways to apply. And I think she has a really good understanding of this. So
Cool.
I'm not against it.
Yeah.
And Mental Illness Happy Hour is a podcast that, they're not on Instagram, but Mental Illness Happy Hour, Maya Bialchik is on Instagram. Mental Illness Happy Hour or Mental Pod, I think they're at Mental Pod on Instagram. They do a really, really good job.
Okay.
So I do recommend both of those. Now, when we talk about bipolar folks, this is bipolar, which is this is
Yep.
or this
Yep.
dot is dot
She's
bipolar.
great. Yep.
Yeah, she does a fantastic
Yep.
job, and she's kind of funny.
She
I
is.
know I know that's you're gonna notice that I gravitate towards a lot of funny stuff. So
Shaylee, I think is her name.
I just I know her face.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the problem. I get complacent. I know that's a weird thing to say, but I just get super complacent.
We all do
There's
it,
another
Tom.
guy. He doesn't have bipolar disorder, but he goes by Nathan is my last name. It's
Okay.
Gabriel Nathan. He's the editor in chief of OC87. Now, here's the thing. He's like super maudlin. I'm gonna, he's everything has a case of like the blues attached to it. Like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. But I say that in a very, very positive way. You're never gonna get like this huge, spring of inspiration from him, but you are gonna get it's okay for life to. He
Yeah.
sort of embodies the it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
But in a extraordinarily cerebral and well written way. And I just kind of want to be clear on that. I'm not going to call it super positive, but you might feel if you read just a couple that it's negative, but it's not. It's very cerebral. He really
Okay.
makes you think, and I follow him because yeah, yeah, he's got some good points there that I think that people don't talk about when they're in this. I need only positive, only happy stuff. So I really feel like he fills that. It's okay to follow some less than happy kind of deal.
I think
And
it's always okay.
I have so many more, but of course the ones that keep coming up over and over again as I'm scrolling through here are the same people.
It's all right.
Yeah, so
We got a good
we're gonna.
start there. That's 4 or 5. I'll put those
Yeah.
up, and I try and do a good job of sharing out, posts that I find value or people that I do. So I'll keep an eye on mine, but I'll make sure to put these out on at least one of the posts that I make about this. With that, Gabe, thank you, man. Thank you so much for sharing. I mean, as I said at the beginning, I see you pop up on my Instagram feed or on LinkedIn, and it's just like for me, it's like, okay, there's the OG. Watch what he's doing. Try and learn as much as I can from you. And I think that just your example out there of what you're doing living with bipolar, trying to help other people living with bipolar, and just being a normal dude who likes Diet Coke and hangs out with his wife and his dog and his kids and isn't perfect. Most importantly, isn't perfect. And so thank you for being vulnerable with us. That's what means the most to me. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
thank you so much. And please keep doing. I mean, not that I need to convince you, but keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
I really wish there could be like 150 billion Gabes, Lees, Cody's, Michelle.
Yeah.
I wish every single person living well with bipolar disorder, depression, schizophrenia, psychosis, anxiety could just be more open about it, because then when people get diagnosed, they're just like, eh,
Yeah.
they know it's going to be
Exactly.
hard, and but they see all these people living well. So
Exactly.
I adore you, and I adore what you do, and please keep it up.
Thanks, Gabe. I promise
Thank you.
it will not be stopping anytime soon. And I know I don't have to say the same thing to you, but if there's ever a moment you do question it, like I know I do all the time, you're killing it, man. And thank you. And
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank
So
you.
appreciate you.